Hello friends. In last video lecture, we understand the analysis of poem Phenomenal Woman written by Maya Angelou. I hope you have listened that analysis very carefully and prepared your notes. In this video lecture, we will understand the beauty of language and the reality of life exposed in the poem Those Winter Sundays, written by Robert Hayden. He was an American poet, essayist, and educator. He has often been praised for his work crafting of poems, the unique perspectives, his exact language, and his absolute command of traditional poetic techniques and structures. Robert Hayden was adopted by a neighbor's family at the age of 2 when his parents separated. His adoptive father was strict Baptist and manual laborer. First, I will read poem and then we will do analysis. Sundays too. My father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold. Then with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather, made banked fire blaze. No one ever thanked him. I would wake and hear the cold splintering, breaking. When the room were warm, he would call, and slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic anger of that house, speaking indifferently to him, who had driven out the cold, and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? My dear friends, the poem is very short, only 14 lines, and it's split into 3 stanzas, each with the poignancy that builds up to the final 2 lines. So we will just understand the analysis in very simple language. Those Winter Sundays is a poem by Robert Hayden written in 1962. In this poem, an adult speaker reflects on how, when he was a child, his father would get up early on Sunday morning throughout the winter in order to light a fire and warm up the house before anyone else got out of the bed. At the time, the speaker failed to appreciate this, as well as the other ways his father expressed affection for his family. Only upon looking back at these memories as an adult, those he understands the often selfless and thankless nature of love. In each stanza, there are hints of cold, distant relationship between father and son, which is never really reconciled. The speaker is quite helpless in this questioning parent, conditioned by the fear from past household experiences. So the main theme of the poem is the parental sacrifice and duty. Do these amount to love? Even if the relationship isn't ideal, even if the father isn't related to by blood, there is still a bond between two individuals. The only thing is, it takes years for this bond to be acknowledged by the child. This poem is just 5 sentences, neatly illustrates the complex nature of the father-son relationship. use of the word father is more formal and ties in with the idea of selfless Christian father figure, that is Christ, suffering from the sake of others. In this poem, the poet says, my father would also wake up early on Sunday mornings and get dressed in the freezing cold with his rough, itching hands, warm from the job as a manual laborer who worked outside. He would light fire in the house. None of us ever said thank you for him for doing this. Soon after, I would wake up and hear the walls and floor beds creaking as the cold left them. Once the house was all warm up, my father would call me and I would get out the bed and get dressed slowly, afraid to getting wrapped in the constant tension in that house. I was detached and distant when I talked to my father, even though he was the one who would conquer the cold and polish my shoes for me too. I don't know back then. I didn't know how tough and isolating it was to be a loving father. Another theme Another theme is family and parenting. Those Winter Sundays is a very simple poem that highlights the sacrifice, often unseen, that parents make for their children. Written from an adult perspective, the poem sees the speaker reflecting on the parenting style of his father. He realizes that his father made sacrifice for him without expecting anything in return, acting only out of love for his family. The poem thus presents parenting as a selfless and often thankless work. To that end, the poem points a vivid picture of speaker's father as a man without a strong sense of familial duties. Sunday, traditionally a day of rest, the father is always the first to rise. On these harsh winter mornings, he gets up early, even though he is tired from his week of hard work outside, to light a fire and bring warmth to the house. The fact that he does this Sundays too implies that he does this during the rest of the week as well. He makes his regular sacrifice in order to make his family more comfortable. This humble ritual suggests the presence of emotional warmth, even if it might not be clearly exposed in words. Indeed, as the speaker confesses, no one ever thanks the father. Ultimately, the speaker feels that his father didn't really get the appreciation that he deserved at this time, and that this is often true of parenting. That's why the poem widens its scope in its closing rhetorical question, asking, what did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? This mention of love is more general, rather than being specifically tied solely to the speaker's father. This question characterizes the responsibilities of the parents as a kind of work, one that often goes unappreciated. That's why it's lonely work and it's austere because it is sometimes hard. Implicitly, then, the poem becomes a subtle argument in favor of appreciating and showing appreciation for your parents. And indeed, for showing that appreciation before it's too late to do so. And if we will talk about the theme of growing up and memory, in this theme, the poem Those Winter Sundays explores the way that the experience of childhood can seem different when looked back on from an adult perspective. In revisiting childhood memories, the poem implies adults can see and understand what they didn't realize at the time. The poem is told entirely in the past tense, situating it firmly in the speaker's memory as he realizes, not without the ting of regret, that as a child he was ignorant of the stubborn ways in which his father took care of him. For example, the speaker recalls the way his father would heat the house on cold Sundays mornings and polish the speaker's good shoes. But the speaker didn't really appreciate any of this. He never thanked his father and usually spoke indifferently to him. He would also linger in bed to avoid getting cuffed, to avoid getting caught up in any family tensions, suggesting how, to this child's mind, family fights were more memorable than acts of love. Basically, the speaker realizes from his adult perspective that he took his father for granted. Now, in adulthood, the speaker more fully understands what it means to make sacrifice for others. Now, he can look back on his childhood and pursue the way that his father was fulfilling love's austere and lonely offices. Office can mean duties or his regular services. Implicit in this phrase is the idea that it takes becoming an adult to learn these austere and lonely offices. Most children can't fully appreciate their parents because they haven't had to be a responsible yet for another human being. Those winter Sundays then has a kind of sadness to it that is equal parts nostalgic and regretful. The speaker knows he can't go back and show his appreciation, but that he can at least record it in the words of this poem. Thank you very much.